Story 1. The Blizzard Stalker. In January 2012, Sarah, a young woman in her mid-20s, decided to spend a peaceful weekend alone in her family's remote cabin in the Rocky Mountains. The area was buried under heavy snowfall, isolating her completely. She loved the solitude, or so she thought. On the second night, a fierce blizzard rolled in. As the wind howled outside, she noticed something strange: footprints leading to her window. At first, she assumed they were her own from earlier in the day, but then she realized the snow had started falling long before she arrived. These prints were fresh. Heart pounding, she double-checked the locks on all doors and windows. Hours passed, but Sarah couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. Around midnight, faint tapping noises started at her window. She froze, too terrified to look, but the sound persisted, growing louder as if someone was trying to get her attention. Finally, she gathered the courage to peek out through the curtain. Standing just beyond the tree line was a shadowy figure. He wore no coat, just a tattered shirt, and clutched something long and sharp in his hand. He didn't move, didn't flinch, despite the freezing wind and snow whipping around him. He stood there, staring. By morning, the figure was gone. When Sarah finally stepped outside, she found scratches on her windowpane and deep footprints leading back into the forest. The police were called but found nothing. Sarah never returned to the cabin again. Story 2. The Ice Road Hitchhiker. Mark and Lisa were returning from a family gathering in northern Minnesota late one December night in 1998. The icy roads were deserted, and the temperature had dropped well below freezing. Suddenly, their car sputtered and came to a stop. With no cell service and no towns nearby, they were stranded in the middle of nowhere. As they debated what to do, a figure emerged in the distance. A man, walking down the road toward them. He wore only a thin jacket, completely inappropriate for the frigid weather. Mark and Lisa exchanged nervous glances as the man approached their car. He knocked on the driver's side window, startling them. Lisa rolled the window down just a crack. The man smiled, but it wasn't a comforting smile. It was too wide, too unnatural. He asked if they could give him a ride to the nearest town. Something about his tone made Mark uneasy, and he politely refused. The man's expression darkened instantly. Without warning, the man slammed his hands against the car window, screaming in a guttural voice that echoed unnaturally, as though it came from the very ice around them. Panicked, Mark turned the key in the ignition, praying the car would start. Miraculously, it roared to life, and they sped off into the night. When they reported the incident to a local officer the next day, the man's description made him visibly pale. The officer explained that several disappearances had been reported in that area, and rumors of a malevolent hitchhiker had haunted locals for years. Story 3. The Lodge of Shadows. In December 2015, a group of friends, Emma, Ryan, Claire, and Alex, rented a remote lodge in rural Maine for a winter getaway. The lodge was advertised as rustic and charming, but when they arrived, it felt cold and unwelcoming. The caretaker mentioned the lodge had been abandoned for decades before reopening recently, but the friends brushed off the eerie vibe. The first night, strange occurrences began. The sound of footsteps echoed through the empty hallways, doors slammed shut on their own, and faint laughter of a child could be heard in the dead of night. By the second day, Ryan discovered an old diary, hidden under a loose floorboard in one of the bedrooms. The diary belonged to a child who once lived in the lodge. Its final entry read, "They come in the snow. They take you where it's cold forever. We're not safe." That same night, Alex disappeared. The friends frantically searched the surrounding woods, following Alex's footprints in the snow. The tracks led them to a clearing, where they abruptly stopped in the middle of untouched snow. There was no sign of Alex, no struggle, no clue as to where he'd gone. The police were called, but Alex was never found. Months later, Emma confided to Claire that she had heard whispers in the clearing that night. They seemed to come from nowhere, repeating one chilling phrase, "You're next."